standing in the city of Cardiff, capital of Wales since 1957. It's a busy, bustling place, a financial and commercial centre. It's here that rugby heroes acquire legendary status. It's hard to imagine that only 200 years ago, Cardiff was just a village. The majestic splendour of the Cardiff castle we see today was then a crumbling Roman remain. All was to change when the Marquis of Bute purchased it as his home. No expense was spared in creating the extravagant towers with its highly decorated, gold-leafed, ceilinged, luxurious rooms. It was financed from the sweat and toil of the navvies, miners, railmen and dockers as Cardiff developed at a rapid pace. What was once a village became the coal exporting capital of the world. The Coal Exchange is one of several buildings remaining in the docks area to remind us of its prosperous past. Originally named Bute Town, it became more widely known as Tiger Bay, as immigrants arrived from all over the world seeking employment in the boom town. Today, all the mines have closed. Depression has hit the valleys, but Cardiff continues to prosper. Although most of the commercial shipping has gone, Cardiff Bay has replaced Tiger Bay, and the area regenerated for private boating and leisure. What we are here to experience is not a tale of two cities, but our commencement point for a journey between two cities, from Cardiff Bay to Swansea Bay. The old pierhead building, with its ornate red brick architecture, has been lovingly restored to its former affluent glory. The Norwegian church, now an arts centre, was constructed to provide a place of worship for Scandinavian sailors on their frequent visits to Cardiff docks. Lightship 2000, a Christian charity, was once anchored in the Bristol Channel to keep shipping away from the notorious sandbanks. Inside is a small chapel depicting Christ as the light of the world. Housed in a new building with over 150 interactive exhibits is Techniquest Science Discovery Centre, a fascinating place for all ages. Many visitors come to the bay just to eat. Mermaid Quay offers restaurants from all corners of the world, together with ice cream parlours, coffee shops and a shopping mall. The clock tower celebrates the life of Captain Ernest Willows, the first man to cross the Bristol Channel in a powered aircraft. It's from the quay that our journey really begins, as we board the Signet water bus. It's operated by Cardiff Cats, who also operate cruises around the bay.
Departing in 4 minutes.
This sheltered 200-hectare inlet at the mouth of the rivers Taff and Ely was once a haven for wildlife at low tide. Wading birds used to feed on the rich pickings of the mud flats. Today these are permanently covered as the estuary has been dammed with an embankment over 800 yards long, and the birds have moved on to new feeding grounds. The boat is taking us to the multi-million-pound barrage, which has taken 5 years to complete. Another route to the barrage is on the land train. Because some of the land is private, it's not possible to walk here from Mermaid Quay. The 5 sluice gates control the water level in the bay. There is also a fish paths. The quality of water is regularly monitored. In the distance is the commercial port of Cardiff. The barrage has 3 locks, 120 feet long, enabling vessels to pass between the Bristol Channel and Cardiff Bay. 24-hour access is provided, and each lock can accommodate up to 10 vessels. Each cantilever bascule bridge weighs 88 tons. At high tide, you can sit and watch the shipping entering the Queen Alexandra dock. A short walk from the barrage takes us to Penarth Marina. Altogether, Cardiff Bay has safe moorings for around 200 small vessels. This was once Penarth Dock, opened in 1865. Such was the demand then for Welsh coal, the collieries were producing more than Cardiff docks could cope with, resulting in the expansion of the other South Wales ports. It earned the reputation of being the fastest loading coal port in the world, and closed in 1963. It was the first part of Cardiff Bay to be redeveloped for leisure activities, with new waterfront apartments. The boatyard carries out repairs and maintenance. Vessels of all sizes and types can also be purchased. The oyster catcher has a popular restaurant. From the marina, we can climb the hill to the town of Penarth. Whilst it can trace its history back to Norman times, it only expanded after the opening of the dock and the arrival of the railway. Dominating the skyline is the 90-foot tower of St. Augustine's Church, erected in 1866 on the site of a sanctuary dating back to the 12th century. It was designed by William Butterfield, architect of Keble College, Oxford. In 1903, a large congregation of Welsh choirs gave a heavenly send-off to Dr. Joseph Parry, organist at nearby Christ Church and talented composer of hymn tunes and choral pieces that are still popular today. There's a full range of shops, both large and small, many of them family-run businesses. Penarth has a population today of around 25,000 and has many fine buildings, including the library completed in 1904. Turner House Art Gallery, dating from 1888, is now part of the National Museum of Wales. The railway arrived in 1878 and the line to Cardiff remains, although trains to Sully and Barry ceased in 1968. Paget Rooms has been a place of entertainment for many years. What were once elegant mansions occupied by ship's captains and other well-to-do gentry are now guest houses, hotels and nursing homes. We're leaving the town centre now and making for the seafront. We descend the hill to the Cymin, whose gardens are now open to the public. As well as being a successful coal exporter, Penarth became a popular Victorian holiday resort. A new block of apartments has replaced the Seafront Hotel, destroyed by fire many years ago. The old swimming baths was built in 1884 and closed in the 1970s. Today it houses a restaurant and bar. On a sunny day, it's pleasant to sit on the seafront drinking a coffee or eating an ice cream. The promenade has been restored to its former Victorian glory, and a plaque commemorates this. The palm trees give it a Mediterranean feel. Indeed, Penarth is known as the garden by the sea. Many elderly folk have moved here to live. Some are ex-colliers coming to enjoy their retirement breathing in the fresh sea air. For the more energetic, there are thriving rowing and yachting clubs. A new building has been constructed for the RNLI. The sea is a perilous place, and many lives have been saved. With a difference of around 50 feet between high and low tides, the Bristol Channel has the second highest tidal range in the world, after the Bay of Fundy, Canada. There's many treacherous sandbanks, rocks and strong currents. Years ago, Penarth was nicknamed Donkey Island, when children used to enjoy rides on the beach. Penarth Pier, built in 1894, is one of only 4 promenade piers in Wales. The pavilion was constructed in 1926, when the new promenade was laid out. Today it's a popular place for a stroll, or just somewhere to sit and relax, admiring the view. Cruising on the Bristol Channel has always been popular, with P&A Campbell's paddle steamers operating trips for many years. Carrying on in the tradition of the Bristol Queen and Cardiff Queen is Waverley. She is the last sea-going paddle steamer in the world and was saved from the Breakers Yard in 1974 by the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society. Waverley was the last paddle steamer built on the Clyde by A&J Inglis in 1947. The only modernisation has been the conversion from coal to oil burning in 1957. Every spring and autumn she arrives here, taking cruises as far away as Lundy. This evening the passengers are off to Clevedon. She's the third paddler to have carried the name Waverley and never worked on the Bristol Channel prior to preservation. Across the bay, we can see the 2 home islands. Home is a Scandinavian word meaning flat river island. Nearest is Flatholme, with its 100-foot lighthouse, ruined buildings and fortifications. Looking towards Weston is Steepholme, with its 250-foot high cliffs. Both are nature reserves. From Penarth Promenade, our coastal walk really begins as we climb the hill on the popular Clifftop Walk, past the cafe, miniature golf course and children's play area. Altogether, we'll be walking around 60 miles, as there are some diversions to take in places. Most of our walking will be on footpaths, and only occasionally will we be following main roads. We leave the built-up area behind us and enter the woodland. The coastline suffers from erosion, and in some places the sea is intruding at a rate of a foot a year. We can descend to the beach at Lavernock Point and study at close quarters the undulating limestone cliffs. In places, blue lias limestone is found at sea level. A plaque on the church wall commemorates the first radio signal sent across water, when in 1897 George Kemp received the message, "Are you ready?" from Marconi on Flat Home. The church, restored in 1852, is dedicated to St. Lawrence. In the Middle Ages, it was owned by the Priory of St. Augustine's, Bristol. The next section of the coastline is private. We follow the lane up the hill to the holiday camp entrance, where we continue on the footpath through the fields. We pass through the nature reserve, managed by the Glamorgan Naturalist Trust. Then rejoin the cliff path at the Second World War anti-aircraft gun emplacement battery. An international work camp has been busy clearing the next section of path for us to enjoy. Throughout 1941, air raids were frequent in the Bristol Channel due to the importance of its ports. The cities of Bristol and Swansea in particular suffered badly during the Blitz. Steps lead down to St. Mary's Well Bay, more commonly known as Lavernock Beach. Years ago this was a popular bay, as there was a halt on the old Penarth to Barry railway line. From the far end of the beach, we stroll down the lane to Swanbridge. There's no village as such, just a house and farm where holiday accommodation is available. Above the rocky beach is the Captain's Wife, a popular place for food and drink. Across the narrow channel stands Sully Island. It's a third of a mile in length, 100 yards wide, and rises to a height of 53 feet. Only at low tide should you attempt to cross over on the causeway. Currents in the channel are strong, ships have been wrecked here, and lives have been lost. There are no buildings on Sully Island, although several organisations over the years have tried to purchase it for development. The island's southern coast has some interesting rock formations. Most of these are man-made as a result of limestone quarrying. 150 years ago, Sully Island covered 20 acres. Today, only 13 remain. Archaeologists have found evidence of Roman occupation and a Danish camp. Over the centuries there have been tales of piracy and smuggling. The most notorious was de Morisco, the night hawk of the Bristol Channel who plundered Cardiff-bound ships in the 13th century. Back on the mainland again, we continue our coastal walk along the beach, as there is no public access through the caravan park on the cliff top. If you wish, you can leave the beach here and walk through the field. Bungalows of all shapes and sizes overlook the sea. We pass the sailing club and the sports field. A right turn will take us to Sully village. The old school has been restored for community use. The church is dedicated to St. John the Baptist and has a square Norman tower. It was founded in the 13th century by the de Sully family, who gave the village its name. They belong to the medieval order of the Knight Hospitallers of St. John of Jerusalem. All trace of the railway has gone, and the goods yard is now the car park for the village's inn. We retrace our steps down the lane and continue on the coast path. High tide is the best time to see commercial shipping in the channel. The cliffs here are low-lying and the path takes us through a wood. We come out at the Bendricks. On these rock levels, around 400 footprints of some of the earliest forms of dinosaur have been found, from about 200 million years ago. The best preserved are now on display at the National Museum of Wales, Cardiff. We cross over the River Cadoxton and continue on the breakwater. Walking along the pier is prohibited from Barry Harbour, and we've several miles walking to go before we get to the other side. We continue through Barry Docks, which still sees some shipping, although it's small today, after the loss of the banana boat traffic. In the middle of all the industrialization is this nature reserve, a wildlife haven. We continue alongside the new Ffordd y Millennium. It follows the route of the Cardiff to Barry railway line, still in operation today. Ahead of us is the Barry Railway Company offices. Upset at the crippling port taxes and severe congestion at Cardiff docks, causing long delays in getting their coal to the ships, coal owners became increasingly annoyed. They decided to bypass Cardiff and raise the necessary finance to lay a railway line direct to Barry and construct a new dock. Outside stands the statue of David Davis from Llandinam, deputy chairman of the company. Unfortunately, he died in 1890, 1 year after Barry Dock opened. By 1901, after the second dock had opened, coal exports from here had even overtaken the output of Cardiff docks. Today, all is silent at the newly landscaped quayside, with new waterfront apartments replacing the cranes and sidings. If you wish, you can leave the dockside and cross over the Gladstone Bridge to the town centre. The Theatre Royal is now a cinema, whilst the Savoy Cinema is now a nightclub. Entertainment is also provided at the Memorial Hall, with a cenotaph standing outside commemorating the lives lost in the 2 world wars. The small town of Barry expanded rapidly after the opening of the docks and railway, but sadly, the new library and town hall are no longer in use today. The town centre has a varied range of shops, from the national chains to Dan Evans, the long-established local department store. We leave the town down Broad Street and turn into High Street. We climb the hill past the Mount Sorrel Hotel and the Methodist Church. At Bethel Baptist, we take a left turn into St. Julian's Road. We turn right into Old Village Road, once the main street to the medieval village of Barry. Nearby stands the remains of Barry Castle. It's really a 14th century fortified manor house. A banqueting suite stood on the upper floor of the gatehouse. This was the residence of the de Barry family, from whom the town took its name. It was later used for manorial courts. We descend the hill to the Gorsedd Circle, commemorating the visit of the National Eisteddfod to Barry. We continue through Romilly Park, where the flower beds are immaculately kept. We climb again to the Church of St. Nicholas, a 19th century sanctuary built on the foundations of the 13th century medieval parish church, and now the home of the local scout troop. We cross over the Barry to Bridgend railway line, now only used by freight traffic. From the Ship Inn we cross the causeway constructed in 1876 to connect Barry with the island. It also carries the railway to the island, enabling it to develop as a holiday resort. Its heyday was in the 1920s, when it became a popular venue for Whitsun treats and was chock-a-block during the miners' fortnights. The original station building survives. Today it's occupied as a railway heritage centre, following the formation of the Vale of Glamorgan Railway Company in 1994. It's a popular buffet and a well-stocked shop. A series of displays give the history and development of Barry's docks and railways, together with photographs depicting the heyday of Barry Island steam. Although those days are long gone, steam still lives on. After purchasing our ticket, we can take a train ride across the causeway. It operates on the push-pull basis. The engine's at the rear, and on the outward journey the guard is controlling the brake from the front cab. We can alight from the train at the new waterfront station. It stands alongside the old Barry Railway goods depot at Hood Road. It will become the running shed for the new line. steam locomotive Pamela has brought us back to Barry Island at the end of the line, Plymouth Road Station. On display is Great Western Tank 5538, the last locomotive rescued from Woodham's Yard, Barry Docks. At the end of steam, locomotives were sold for scrap and cut up. Woodham's was the only yard where they were left rusting away, until preservationists purchased them, then spent many hours and thousands of pounds restoring them to working order, enabling us to enjoy the experience of steam today. After viewing the workshop, we can see the two cranes on display in the yard. This was not always the end of the line. Trains used to go through the tunnel to Barry Harbour. Today you can catch a boat to the island of Flatholme. In 1905, the Barry Railway operated the paddle steamers Gwalior and Devonia, which competed for traffic with P&A Campbell's much larger fleet. They resorted to legal action, forcing the Barry Railway to sell its ships 6 years later. Above the harbour stands the ruined foundations of St. Barrack's Chapel. He was a 7th century Irish saint said to have drowned off Flatholme, and his body washed ashore here. The chapel was constructed in his memory. A path leads down to Jackson's Bay, the quietest of the island's two sandy beaches. From the far end of the bay we can walk around Nell's Point. At one time there was a holy well, said to cure eye ailments. Butlin's holiday camp was built on the site. It's closed now, and the rows of chalets have been demolished awaiting redevelopment. New housing has already been erected on part of the site. Whitmore Bay has always been the busiest of the two, due to its close proximity to the station, although most visitors now arrive by car. Although the days of a fortnight's holiday here have long gone, day trippers still arrive when the weather's fine. Children still enjoy bathing in the sea, building sand castles and playing games. The funfair has been popular for over 80 years, and traditional rides like the galloping horses are still here, although old favourites like the figure of 8 have long gone. There are plenty of thrills and spills for today's youngsters. The shops still sell postcards, beach balls, buckets and spades, chips, candy floss, ice cream, and of course, Barry Island rock. Parents can sit and relax overlooking the sea with a good book. At the far end of Whitmore Bay, a footpath takes us around Friars Point. Before the arrival of the docks and tourism, the only inhabitants here were farm workers and a large population of rabbits. They were farmed here as early as the 13th century and shipped weekly to Bristol Market. Today, it's popular for fishing. Over the years, this house has been used as a Coast Guard station, hotel, and is currently being restored. This harbour was the original port of Barry, dating back to Roman times. In the 16th and 17th centuries, vessels up to 30 tons were registered here. Exports included coal, cotton, butter and cheese. Imported were pitch, honey, salt, wine and wool. In the 1850s, it exported 5,000 tons of limestone a year and continued trading until the causeway was constructed. After recrossing the causeway, we come to Parade Gardens. The flower beds are well kept, and nearby there's a hotel and guest houses. The original coast path is overgrown, and we have to continue along the road. Coldnap Way takes us back to the sea to Watch House Bay. The watchtower and rocket shed were built around 1860 by the Coast Guard for storing and firing distress rockets. Above the beach stands Coldnap Farm, first built in the 16th century. It's Barry's oldest domestic building, and the sheltered location made it ideal for smuggling. A footpath takes us around the point. We descend to the Nap with its long pebbled beach. Across the promenade is the marine lake. This was once a tidal marsh. The estuary was cut off after the pebble beach advanced in the 17th century. The present lake was created in the shape of a Welsh harp in the 1930s. Early every morning, whatever the weather, local residents arrived to feed the swans. Standing above the beach at Glanamore is the foundations of a late 3rd century Roman building, discovered in 1980 when the foundations were being dug for new housing. Some of the site has been saved. It was probably a naval base used to fend off Irish pirates. The Romans obtained the stone for their building from the Bull Cliff. It's possible to walk along the beach to Porthkerry. However, it's a more enjoyable walk along the cliff top. The cliff was also quarried in the 18th century. The polished limestone was used for gravestones and referred to as Bull Cliff marble. This woodland was the first local nature reserve in Wales. We descend the steps, known as the Golden Stairs, to the Nant Talwg and Porthkerry Park. Standing above the 18-hole miniature golf course is the 13-arched viaduct, which rises to a height of 110 feet. After opening in 1897, disaster struck within days when one of the piers slipped, closing the line for 2 years. Although it's a freight-only line today, steam specials occasionally pass this way. From Porthkerry Park, the coastal path has brought us to Roose Point, the southernmost point on the Welsh mainland. This monument was placed here for the millennium. Landscaping and land reclamation is taking place at the disused quarries. We continue along the coast path towards Roose Bay. Alternatively, you can walk along the beach at low tide. After passing through the caravan park, we descend to the salt marsh of Fontagary Bay. It's hard to imagine today that there was once a busy port here, prior to the construction of the cement works and power stations. This ruin is the old power station, and nature is reclaiming the landscape. A walk up the hill will take us across the railway line. A coal train is passing on its way to the Abertawe power station. Abertawe signal box and platform both survive, although passenger trains ceased in the 1960s. Despite its proximity to the cement works and power stations, East Abertawe is a pleasant village. The thatched roof, Blue Anchor Inn, is the oldest in the Vale of Glamorgan, dating back to 1380. Farming used to be the main industry, and the old granary has been converted to residential use. There's a number of old cottages. Alongside the craft shop is Bethel Baptist Church. From Well Road, we can make our way back to the coastal path. From the railway bridge, we take the footpath to the left, keeping a careful lookout for adders. Many folk have been bitten in this area over the years. We rejoin the marsh by the lake at the far side of the old power station. The coastal path now follows the sea wall. We cross over the River Thor and walk around the perimeter fence of the power station. Half a mile offshore is the Caison, marking the cooling water inlet. We come out at Gileston at the rocky Limpet Bay. The next 7 miles of our walk will be along the Heritage Coast Path, established in 1973 with the objective of conserving its landscape, character and habits. It's a bit of a chore walking along the rocky beach, and a way-marked path takes us along the edge of the fields behind the breakwater. At the far end of the bay, we return to the beach for a short distance. In the 1930s, miners with infected lungs came to the Havard camp to convalesce and retrain in agricultural work. It was later used as a Christian centre by an evangelistic trust. We leave the beach and take the path along the cliff top. It leads to the ruined 18th century octagonal summer house. It's part of the estate owned by the Sayes family from Tudor times, who resided at Boverton Place, now also a ruin. Here they would enjoy picnics overlooking the sea. The adjoining caretaker's cottage was later occupied by an agricultural worker until the 1920s. The path takes us across the banks and the ditches of an Iron Age promontory fort, now considerably overgrown. At Summerhouse Point, the Sea Watch Centre occupies the old Coast Guard station and has educational displays on radar, weather forecasting and the sea. For the next few miles, we have some spectacular views over the channel as the coastal path follows the cliff top. We descend to the popular beach of Colhew Bay. A lifeguard service is provided, as it's not always suitable for bathing. There's a shop and a cafe overlooking the Colhew Valley. We're leaving the coastal path here for a while and following the path upstream. We climb the hill and continue past a farm. We join a lane. After a 1.5 mile walk from the beach, arrive at Llantwit Major. It's a historic town, and the old cottages standing alongside its narrow lanes give it a village feel. There was once a large Roman villa here, and excavations have revealed evidence of its being attacked by Irish raiders, set on fire, and the occupants massacred. The original town hall was built in 1295, when Gilbert de Clare was Lord of Glamorgan. What we see today is a 15th century rebuild after Owain Glyndŵr had sacked the town. The Latin inscription on the bell in the turret reads, "St. Illtyd, pray for us." It was later used as a school, barn and a smithy. The 15th century Swan Inn, claimed to be the town's oldest, once had a mint, whilst the White Hart held a court. The cenotaph, with its distinctive Celtic cross, remembers the town's citizens lost during the 2 World Wars. Llantwit Major is a corruption of the Welsh Llanilltyd Fawr, meaning the great church of St. Illtyd. He was a Breton missionary who established a monastery here around 500 AD. The Normans converted it into a parish church around 1100. It's really 2 churches joined by a central tower, erected in about 1200. Extensive restoration work is currently taking place inside. These are the ruined walls of the 13th century Galilee Chapel, a place of pilgrimage. It fell into ruin after the Reformation, when many of the church's treasures, ornaments and vestments were removed, including a cloak said to have been worn by Hywel Dda. A German bomb dropped on the old Chantry priest's residence in 1940. When it was used as a smithy. It also blew out the windows on the south side of the church. In the churchyard, the medieval cross has been restored. As we walk around this sacred site, let's remember St. Illtyd, who not only established a monastery, but also developed it into the first British university, where he taught such eminent pupils as St. David, St. Patrick, St. Samson of Brittany, Taliesin the bard, and Gildas the historian. On the hill opposite the church stands the 13th century gatehouse, all that remains of a range of farm and domestic buildings forming the Grange of Tewkesbury Abbey. The columbarium, or dovecot, dates from the same period. Doves were kept here for their eggs and meat, especially during the lean winter months. The tithe barn has gone, but the row of cottages remain. There are a number of books and leaflets available, providing information on the town's historic buildings. After passing a farm, we come to Llantwick Place, sometimes incorrectly described as the castle. It's really a ruined three-storey Elizabethan manor house, built in 1596 by Candleston lawyer Griffith Williams for his daughter and son-in-law. The old school now houses the council chamber. Some of the rooms have been converted for recreational and community use. The Great House, once the residence of the Nicol family, probably dates from the early 16th century, with the south wing being added later. 100 years ago it was in a state of disrepair, but unlike Llantwick Place, it has been restored to its former glory. Many of the old cottages have been whitewashed. It's pleasant to wander through the town's narrow streets, thankful that the cottages have not been demolished and replaced with the standardized modern housing found in so many places today. Every June, a one-day Victorian fair is held when the streets of this historic town really come alive. This year, 2001, we're celebrating the centenary of the death of Queen Victoria.
Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay! The Children's Fancy Victorian Dress Competition will be judged at 11 a.m.
The streets are close to traffic and the stalls have all sorts of mouth-watering things to eat.
You're doing better off getting speaks from here, look.
You can have your shoes polished, or try and win a prize with your skill. With around 70 stalls, the organisers hope to raise a substantial sum of money for local and national charities. There's music, exhibitions, and plenty of entertainment for young and old alike.
Now here's one to really test you all. To see if you can remember your history. I wonder what sort of a dog he is now. What about that? Eh? No, he's not a Viking. No, no, no. He's a Great Dane. There we go.
It's when the rest of the gang. Ready, audience? 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Next time. Next time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Well, that two's not bad.
It's time to leave Llantwit Major and Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and take the road back to the beach. On our return journey, we're following the path through the nature reserve. At the far end of Colhew Bay, we rejoin the heritage coastal path along the cliff top. Here we can study the geology of the cliffs. They have a series of limestone rock layers, each about 9 inches thick, mixed with layers of softer shale. The rocks are referred to as Liassic limestone, after the age, around 180 million years ago. These cliffs were formed then from the accumulation of millions of shells mixed with mud. On the hilltop is the pillbox, dating from World War II. Below us is Tresillian Bay. Tresillian House will forever be linked with the tales of highwaymen and piracy. At one time there is said to have been a tunnel connected to Reynard's Cave on the headland. It's only accessible at low tide, and there are stories of the pirate Colin Dolphin being buried up to his neck awaiting the incoming tide. We leave the beach and climb back up to the cliff top. As well as the limestone cliffs, geologists are fascinated by the wave-cut platforms seen at low tide, dating back to the last ice age. After walking through King George's Field, we can see St. Donat's Castle ahead of us. The path descends to the rocky beach, said to have been used for smuggling by the Stradlings, occupiers of the castle. The double enclosure castle, dating from the 13th century, has been in continuous occupation and modernized several times. The site was purchased by American newspaper magnate Randall Hearst in the early 20th century and houses the International Sixth Form Atlantic College. Below the castle is the church dedicated to St. Dynwydd, whose name has been corrupted into St. Donat. It dates from the 12th century, with later additions financed by the Stradling family. They can trace their history here back to the Norman conquest and were persecuted in Elizabethan times. They were fervent royalists during the Civil War, and the last Stradling died in a duel in 1738. Standing in the churchyard is a Calvary preaching cross with a carving made from 3 different types of stone. From St. Donat's Beach, we climb up the steps and through a wood to the cliff top. Agriculture has been the main occupation of the area since the Norman conquest. Sandbanks in the Bristol Channel make this a treacherous place for shipping. In 1832, the pleasure steamer Frolic ran aground on Nash Point sandbank with the loss of 40 lives. Following a public outcry, 2 lighthouses were erected on Nash Point. They were carefully positioned 1,000 feet apart so that they could be aligned by ships sailing up the channel. Today, only the eastern light, now fully automated, remains in use. A footpath leads down to the rocky bay. This area is rich in fossils, and finds include the rare fish lizard, the ichthyosaur. Sea anemones and shrimps shelter in the rock pools, whilst barnacles and mussels anchor themselves to the rocks. Weathering of the soft layers of shale between the limestone in the cliffs has caused many rockfalls, and visitors need to keep well away. The sea is also causing erosion, creating this arch. If you wish to leave the coast path for a while, there's a pleasant walk up the Marcross Valley to Marcross Church. It was built by the Normans in the 12th century and is dedicated to the Holy Trinity. The tower has a distinctive gabled roof. Just before Nash Point, we take the path to the cliff top. These banks and ditches were part of an Iron Age promontory fort built around 700 BC. Its occupants were farmers, housed in circular huts, surrounded by a timber barricade. These cliffs are home to herring gulls, fulmars and cormorants. Out in the channel we can see the notorious Nash Bank. In the past, games of cricket have been played on it. Controversy is currently raging concerning the removal of sand from the bank. Many experts feel that this is causing loss of sand from the beaches. We descend to the mouth of the Monknash Valley. The next section of the coast is private. At high tide, you have to follow a diversion up the valley to the village and continue along the lanes. At low tide, we can walk the next section along the storm beach. This enables us to study the limestone cliffs at close quarters. At Treithbach, if you're brave, you can climb up the ladders or continue along the beach. Walkers taking the diversion through Monknash rejoin us here. The path continues along the cliff top, which rises to a height of 200 feet. We descend into a sheltered wooden valley where you may catch sight of starling, robin, redwing or green woodpecker. This brings us to Dunraven Park, whose history goes back to Roman times when it was the legendary dwelling place of Celtic chieftain Caractacus. Below us is Temple Bay. At low tide we have an excellent view of the wave-cut limestone terraces on the beach. Walkers who have continued along the beach rejoin us here. Tide times should be checked carefully when attempting this, as some of the headlands get cut off quickly by the incoming tide. We continue around the headland of Troenewich, the Witch's Nose. Here we can feel the full force of the westerly wind. We continue to the hilltop, then descend to the site of Dunraven Castle. A Norman castle stood here until Owain Glyndwr razed it to the ground in 1405. It was rebuilt as a Gothic mansion in 1803 by the Wyndham family. In view of its ruined state, it was demolished in 1963, leaving the foundations and a few sections of wall. Below the castle stood the Victorian gardens. Not only have these survived, they have been restored to their former glory. As well as the different varieties of flowers and plants, there are also fruit trees, an orchard, and a medicinal herb garden. It's also sheltered from the westerly wind. From the top of the restored ice tower, we have views towards Dunraven Bay, our next destination. Before reaching the beach, a walk up the secluded valley leads us to the Heritage Coast Centre, where books, leaflets and information are available. The display boards tell the story of the castle and its occupants, together with the geology and natural history. We pass a thatched cottage and make for the beach. Dunraven Bay is a popular place as the sandy beach is safe for bathing. It's the first one with a car park since Colhew Bay, Llantwit Major. It's a steep climb up the hill towards Southerndown. Because of cliff erosion, walkers should stick to the roadside. At the top, we can rest a while, taking in the view of Dunraven Bay and the Witch's Nose. Again, cliffs are of considerable interest to geologists. This time the horizontal layers of Liassic limestone overlie the much older Carboniferous limestone. The height of the cliffs reduces considerably as we approach Ogmore by sea. Bathing is prohibited in the vicinity of the river estuary. Here we have our first view of the popular resort of Porthcawl. As there is no bridge, we have to follow the river Ogmore inland. This is an important habitat for wading birds, such as oyster catchers, curlews, sanderlings, dunlins and plover. Further up the river we find black-headed gulls, shelduck and mute swans. From the bridge we have to leave the riverbank and continue along the roadside. A rest can be taken at the Pelican Inn. We leave the road and take the lane past Ogmore Farm and the horse riding centre. The Ogmore Castle we see today dates from the 12th and 13th centuries and is one of 3 built by the Normans on the flat, fertile plains of the western vale of Glamorgan. A footbridge has replaced a drawbridge over the moat, which obtained its water from the river. Only the arch of the gatehouse remains. It's built on the site of an early timber fortification on a motte, constructed by the Baron William de Londres. It was erected here to guard the important ford across the River Iwenny, a tributary of the Ogmore. The castle also had a courthouse, where the administration of the lordship was undertaken. Convicts were held in the prison. Stepping stones have replaced the ford, and we cross here to resume our coastal walk. We follow the track through fields and take the bridge over the River Ogmore. The lane leads to the attractive hamlet of Merthyr Mawr. It's a quiet place with thatched cottages, something of a rarity in South Wales. There's no shop or inn. The neo-Gothic church is dedicated to St. Tylo. Although it only dates from the 19th century, it's on the site of a much earlier sanctuary. Visitors are welcomed inside to sit, pray and meditate. For connoisseurs of historic buildings, a visit to nearby Iwenny Priory, one of the best fortified monasteries in Britain, is a must. From the church, our walk continues down the lane. The adjoining land is private with no rights of way. At the end of the lane stands Candleston Castle, a tree-covered ruin. It's a 14th century fortified manor house, originally the home of the de Cantilupe family. The 2-story rectangular keep, hall and other domestic buildings have survived. All trace of the gateway is gone. What was once fertile land was replaced over a period of time by encroaching sand and the manor abandoned. A footpath from the castle leads to the vast sand dunes of Merthyr Mawr, also referred to as the Warren. Much of the sand was originally carried into the sea as glacial debris during the last ice age, then driven ashore by the tide and prevailing winds. Many different species of flower can be seen here. Significant archaeological discoveries have been made over the last 100 years, including a Beaker folk burial, together with Iron Age, Bronze Age, and Romano-British pottery, tools and ornaments. We've had quite a diversion to travel a short distance as the crow flies, or should that be as the gull flies? We're back at the estuary now, opposite Ogmore by Sea. Our walk continues along Newton Beach. This part of the beach is known as the Black Rocks, which needs no explanation. At the far end of the beach is Treco Bay Caravan Park, one of the largest in Europe. All holiday amenities and entertainment are found here. After rounding Newton Point, we come to Treco Bay itself. At low tide, when the red flag is flying, bathing in the sea is strictly prohibited. The lifeguards are here to ensure everyone's safety. Staff in the Land Rover are keeping a close eye on the children today. Sandy Bay has always been the most popular of Porthcall's beaches. This is one place where the tradition of donkey rides has survived into the 21st century. Coney Beach is the place to be at night. It's on the site of what was once a ballast tip for the dock. Unfortunately, the once popular water chute is no more. The harbour today provides safe mooring for fishing boats and cabin cruisers. Porthcawl was a coal exporter until the end of the 19th century, when the opening of Barry and Port Talbot docks effectively killed it off. The dock has been filled in and converted into a car park. Only the outer harbour remains. Cruise ships still call here, and today Balmoral, like Waverley, is operated by the Paddle Wheel Preservation Society. She spends 6 weeks cruising the Bristol Channel during the peak holiday season. Passengers are boarding today for a cruise to Ilfracombe. She's not a paddle steamer like Waverley, but is powered by 2 diesel engines driving twin screws. She was built in 1949 by J.I. Thornycroft, Southampton, and operated on the Southampton to Cowes, Isle of Wight Red Funnel ferry service. In 1969, P&A Campbell hired her to supplement their Bristol Channel White Funnel fleet, and she cruised here for the next 12 years. After preservation and an overhaul, she has returned here annually since 1986. At the end of the breakwater stands the lighthouse, the only one in Britain lit by mains natural gas. In 1825, a horse-drawn tramway arrived from Maesteg, transporting coal to the harbour. It was superseded by the broad-gauge Llinvi Valley Railway. A section of original tramroad track remains. The Porthcawl Coast Guard Service was established in 1834. The first lifeboat, the Good Deliverance, was stationed on the promenade in 1860. Due to the decline of the port, the RNLI withdrew the service in 1902. An inshore lifeboat service commenced in 1965, now housed in the new boathouse. Porthcawl developed as a seaside resort after the railway was taken over by the Great Western. All trace of it is now gone, and today's visitors arrive by road. Standing above the promenade is the Grand Pavilion, erected in 1932. All types of shows and concerts are held here all year round. Cor Maibion Porthcawl, the Porthcawl Male Choir, have performed here on many occasions. The present choir was established in 1980 after a gap of some 50 years. They have performed in the Royal Albert Hall, London and Cardiff Arms Park. Extensive tours have taken them throughout the UK and across Europe, raising a considerable sum of money for good causes. They have 45 active members and will always welcome new recruits. Tonight they are rehearsing for a forthcoming concert. As the town developed as a tourist resort, hotels were constructed overlooking the new promenade. The Esplanade survives today, although others have been converted into holiday flats. The promenade has been restored to its former glory. Eating an ice cream is as popular as ever. Much of the finance came from the Brogden family, and the main shopping street, John Street, is named after one of them. The old police station now houses the Tourist Information Office, the Town's Museum and Art Gallery. All Saints Church was built after the First World War in the 15th century English Gothic style, using stone quarried from the Forest of Dean. The cenotaph records the 115 lives lost in the two world wars. Our journey recommences at the seafront. Bathing is dangerous in the vicinity of Iron Gate Point. Although we've left the heritage coast, the 11-mile route from here to Margam Park is described in a community walk leaflet. The limestone cliffs in this area are low-lying. This stretch of coast is very exposed. The westerly wind, together with the incoming tide, is creating the rough sea. Ahead of us is Rest Bay and the Royal Porthcawl Golf Club. The sea conditions are ideal for surfing. The footpath skirts the golf course towards Scare Point. April 23rd, 1947 is a day that will never be forgotten in South Wales. The 7,000-ton Liberty ship SS Santampa ran aground here during a violent Force 10 gale. The Mumba's lifeboat, Edward, Prince of Wales, was summoned to the rescue, but the Santampa broke into three within an hour. All 39 crewmen lost their lives, together with a coxswain, William Gammon, and his 7 lifeboatmen. Inland is Scare House. It dates back to Tudor times and was a grange belonging to the monks of Neath Abbey. After the Reformation, it was converted into a farmhouse. This was the setting for R.D. Blackmore's classical novel, The Maid of Scare. After rounding Scare Point, we come to the strangely named Pink Bay. You can either follow the path behind the dunes or continue along the beach. Again, we can see evidence of shipwrecks. Ahead, we can see Port Talbot Steelworks, the largest strip mill in Europe. Lives have been lost here as well. We leave the beach at the estuary of the River Kenfig The river flows through an area of marshland with sand dunes and woodland behind it. This has been designated a local nature reserve. This is an ideal place to seek shelter from the blowing sand. Adjoining is the 1,300-acre Kenfig National Nature Reserve, with a number of way-marked routes through the dunes. The time to come here is in May and June, when a large number of orchids can be seen. Purple and pink marsh orchids are the commonest. Green-winged orchids are rare nationally, which is why their appearance here makes this reserve important. Bee orchids are scarce. Other plants in the slack areas between the dunes include white round-leaved wintergreen, adder's tongue, yellow rattle and kidney vetch. There are a number of marshy areas, the habitat of the marsh marigold. In the centre of the reserve is the Kenfig Pool. At 70 acres, this is the largest natural lake in South Wales. It's surrounded by common reed, sea club rush and water horsetail. Altogether, there are 545 species of plant here. The Reserve Centre, adjacent to the car park, provides information to visitors and has a well-stocked shop. The display boards inform us of the reserve's plants, flowers, birds and animals. School children visit on educational trips and examples of their work is on display. The reserve is popular all year round. Even on a sunny winter's day, visitors come to feed the ducks and swans. In spring and autumn, its fresh water is welcomed by migratory birds. A local legend tells how the village of Kenfig was drowned beneath a pool in a single night as punishment for the sins of its inhabitants. Whilst we can dismiss this story, we do know that there was a settlement here from the time of the Iron Age. Kenfig is derived from the Welsh Cefn-y-Figen. The Norman borough was incorporated in 1147, but the sand gradually encroached as it did in other places along this coast. It was probably abandoned about the 15th century, and the remains of the buildings are buried somewhere beneath the dunes. The only thing visible now is the crumbling castle walls. Whilst it had a commanding view over the River Kenfig, this did not prevent it from being attacked many times by the Welsh in the 13th and 14th centuries. From the castle, we follow the track under the busy M4 motorway, then continue on the road under the main Cardiff to Swansea railway line. We turn right, pass Glasrin Kennels and Cattery, and then continue on the footpath through farmland. After passing Llangmiangel Farm, we continue on the track called the Black Path, named after the miners who walked down it on their way to work. This brings us to Pyle and the Church of St. James with its square Norman tower. It's built of stone from the old Kenfig church. The only thing is, it's upside down. Stones from the top of the old church were placed at the bottom, and stones from the bottom are now at the top. We continue along the A48, which was the main Cardiff to Swansea road before the M4 opened. After crossing Pyle Bridge, we turn right and follow the path through fields towards Margam Park. Margam Park has plenty of attraction for its visitors. Rhea, an ostrich-like bird, come from Patagonia, South America, where many Welshmen emigrated in the 19th century. There are also a number of owls here. Other birds of prey, such as buzzards, kestrels, and sparrowhawks, can sometimes be seen flying over the park. Since 1983, items of sculpture have been on display throughout the park. The original 60 items were crafted by 35 top British sculptors. New ones are continually being added. Margam's first inhabitants were probably Bronze Age farmers. The Roman road, the Julia Maritima, is reckoned to have passed through the park on its way from Caerleon to Carmarthen. After the Romans left, the Celtic church prospered. This was the 12-sided chapter house where the business of the abbey was conducted. The abbey was founded in 1147 by Robert Consul, Earl of Gloucester. Cistercian monks from Clairvaux Abbey in France came here, and it became the largest and wealthiest in Wales. The monks reared sheep, horses, and cattle. They also mined for iron and coal. Only 9 monks remained at the Reformation, and the abbey fell into decay. The estate was purchased by Sir Rice Mansell, who owned the castles of Penrice and Oxwich in Gower. Today's Abbey Church was once part of the Abbey nave. It's dedicated to St. Mary the Virgin, and the entrance arch is typical Norman style. It was considerably remodeled in the Italianate style in the 19th century. Today it serves as the parish church and is one of only 3 Cistercian churches still in use in Britain. The old village school is now the Margam Stones Museum. It contains a fine collection of early Christian sculptured and inscribed stones, together with cartwheel crosses. All these date from the 6th to the 11th centuries. The orangery is unique in Wales, constructed of locally quarried stone and completed in 1790. 327 feet long, it housed 100 orange, lemon, and citrus trees. It was in a ruined state when the local council took over the Margam estate in 1973. It took 4 years to restore and was reopened by the Queen. Now it's used for conferences, concerts, grand balls, and is licensed for weddings. From the orangery, we can ascend the steps towards Margam Castle. In 1711, Sir Thomas Mansell became Baron Mansell of Margam. When the fourth Baron died in 1750, there was no male heir. The estates of Margam, Oxwich and Penrice passed to his sister Mary. She married into the equally wealthy Talbot family from Lakecock, Wiltshire. Thomas Mansell Talbot made Penrice his main seat, and the original Margam house was demolished. However, in 1830, Christopher Rice Mansell Talbot planned to return to Margam, and 10 years later his new Tudor Gothic-style castle was completed. In 1939, the government requisitioned part of the castle, and later in the war it was damaged whilst occupied by British and American troops. A subsequent fire reduced it to a shell. Renovation of the outside has been completed, whilst inside substantial work has already been carried out for us to view today. A display area provides the history of Margam, together with a family tree and information on the Mansell and Talbot families. The visitor centre has been open for a number of years and is centred around an open courtyard. There's a coach house theatre giving film shows, a cafe and gift shop. The lovebirds come from Africa. The park's most popular attraction is probably the deer. With over 650 animals, the herd of fallow deer is the largest to be found in South Wales. Père David deer are much larger animals. They're rare and named after a Jesuit priest who imported them to Britain from China, where they're now extinct. The park also has red deer and Chinese water deer. There's a number of walks in the park, and for history lovers, this trail takes us up the hill to Mynydd-y-Castell Iron Age hill fort. It was once inhabited by the Silures tribe. Some stonework remains above the banks and the ditches, although most of the 7-acre site is covered in trees and bracken. From here we descend to the fish pond. If you're quiet, this is a good place for bird watching. There's a rich variety here, including herons, skylarks, stonechats, nuthatch and tits. Alternatively, you can just sit and relax and watch the ducks. The park's flock of geese are making for the new pond. Mammals found in the park include foxes, badgers, hares, grey squirrels, moles, voles and shrews. This park also has a rare herd of Glamorgan cattle. We leave the park, cross the long-distance footpath named the Coed Morgannwg Way, and take the wooded path up the hill. At the top stands the ruined Hen Eglwys, or Craic Chapel. It was built in the 15th century to provide a place of worship for local people who were not permitted to enter the abbey. whilst the gentry had an easy time getting to their sanctuary, the poor old commoners had to struggle up the very steep hill to worship here. But there are excellent views from the top. From the chapel we continue our long-distance walk. We're not that far from the coast, and these range of hills are the first high ground inland. Below us is the M4 motorway, the Abbey steelworks, and the town of Port Talbot. We pass a World War II coastal lookout. The world above the motorway is completely different to the one below it. Most people passing through in their cars don't realize that such beautiful countryside is so close to them. Few people walk this way. There's no leaflet available covering the route from Margam to Swansea. You have to work it out for yourself, which in some ways makes it more interesting. We follow the stream through a combe and then climb again up the next hill. Again we have views of Port Talbot. It received its name from the Talbots of Margam Park in 1836. Previously it was a collection of villages including Taibach, Abertawe, Velindre and Baglan. After the new deep water dock and steelworks opened, the town became on one hand an urban sprawl, and on the other, a place of much needed employment. We descend to the riverbank and continue on the track bed of the old Maesteg railway line. We leave it here and climb up through the woodland. This is the furthest we've been inland on this journey. We've been forced this way as the farmland is private and the only alternative is to walk through the streets of Port Talbot. We follow the track up to the top of the hill where we have views down into the Avon Valley. We descend to the village of Cumavan. The parish church is dedicated to St. Michael. The square Norman tower has a steeple, a rarity on this journey. We follow another old railway line for a short way, cross the main road and continue on the footpath. The next section of our walk will take us up through a wooded valley and across the hills toward Britain Ferry. This was once a coal mining area, and as they have closed over the last century, forestation has replaced the mines and slag tips. Below us is the M4 and the first Britain Ferry Bridge, opened in the 1960s to provide a shorter route to Swansea. We descend towards Llansawel. Its English name is Britain Ferry and was once a busy industrial town. Its name comes from the time when there was a ferry across the River Neath. We cross over the Paddington to Swansea railway line and can imagine how much activity there would have been 100 years ago. The parish church, dedicated to St. Mary the Virgin, has been completely rebuilt. Only the square Norman tower is original. Some industry remains alongside the Neath Canal, which opened in 1799. Most of its 13-mile route up the valley survives, though only 2 of its 19 locks are now operational. The dock on the eastern bank of the River Neath was designed by the great engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel and opened in 1861. In the 1960s, many vessels came here to be scrapped, a giant's grave. We cross the road at the traffic lights and walk beside the A465 towards Swansea. We pass under the M4. We take the subway under the road and pass Earlswood Golf Club. We take the road towards Jersey Marine Village from the roundabout and cross over the railway line, now only used by freight traffic. At the New Tower Hotel, you can stop to view the old tower. This red brick 4-story tower was built in the 19th century by John Taylor to house a camera obscura, a popular attraction at the time. One still survives in Aberystwyth. The nearby beach was once a popular resort, with visitors staying at the Marine Hotel, long demolished. It was also a popular place for wits and treats, with children arriving in canal barges on the Tennant Canal. Our walk continues along the towpath. Ahead of us is the pipeline which carried oil from BP Llandarcy to the storage tanks on the beach. The plant is now closed down. The canal opened in 1824 to transport coal to Swansea docks and is named after the local estate owner, George Tennant. It connected with the Neath Canal at Abertawe, and most of its 8.5 miles survives. Our footpath connects up with route number 4 of the National Cycle Network. Across the canal is Crumlin Bog, an important nature reserve. Swansea Borough's freight yard is now operated by the English, Welsh and Scottish Railway. Dannegraig Engine Shed, once the locomotive depot and repair shop of the Rhondda and Swansea Bay Railway, is now occupied by Gower Chemicals. We pass the Swansea East Side football pitches and a lake. The Tennant Canal now ends at Fabian Way. It used to flow into the docks. At Port Tennant, you could walk through the streets to Swansea, but it's far more rewarding to climb up Kilvey Hill, taking the lane behind Dannegraig Cemetery. Below us, we can see in the distance BP Baglan Bay and the hills above Port Talbot. At the top of Kilvey Hill stand 2 TV masts. Below us is the Swansea Valley, once the copper smelting capital of the world. It became a derelict wasteland in the 1970s, and what was once a moonscape has now been landscaped and redeveloped. Below us is Swansea Docks. Only the King's Dock and the Prince of Wales Dock survive today. The Old South Dock is a marina, and in the distance we can see Mumble's Head. Copper barks sailed regularly to South America to collect the copper ore for the valley's works. We descend to St. Thomas. Dominating the skyline is the tower and spire of the parish church. For most of our journey, we've concentrated on the places, their history, and the men involved in their stories. There have been many characters whose names are not recorded in the annals of history. This story tells of two brothers who grew up in Danagraig and St. Thomas, whose names will live on. They sang in the choir here, when the family lived in St. Ledger Crescent and Grenfell Park Road. Fred became Vicar of Cocket. Harry went on to become the much-loved Sir Harry Seacombe, goon, singer, entertainer and presenter, who brought joy and laughter to so many people, and who never lost his childhood faith. He died in 2001 at the age of 79. The council house at 55 Danagraig Terrace, where he was born, survives, now renumbered 166 Danagraig Road. One day a plaque will be displayed here. What a pity that his home city failed to recognize his achievements before his death. We leave St. Thomas and cross the River Tawe on the New Cut Bridge. This river gives Swansea its Welsh name, Abertawe. On the western bank stands an anti-aircraft gun, erected for the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II. It was presented to the city by the Royal Artillery Association and remembers the servicemen and civilians who perished in the conflict. The stone piers are all that remain of the 1853 railway bridge. The Norwegian church, similar to the one seen in Cardiff, is not currently in use. This column is all that remains of Weaver's Flour Mill, the first reinforced concrete framed building in Britain. The dry dock has also gone. On the site of the North Dock is Park Tower and the Plantasia Hothouse. The Castle Cinema is now a laser zone. Swansea's Norman Castle is not as grand as Cardiff's, but at least it's all original and not a rebuild. Its most striking feature is the fine 14th century arcaded parapet in the south wall, similar to the ones at St. David's and Lamphy Bishop's Palaces. They were the work of Bishop Henry de Gower. The adjoining buildings in Castle Street survived the Blitz. What a pity it will be if they are lost in the proposed redevelopment scheme. The much-loved Castle Gardens has been replaced by Castle Square. Most of pre-war central Swansea was flattened by Hitler's bombs. Whole streets have disappeared. From the ashes came wide boulevards with concrete 1960s architecture. St. Mary's Church was badly damaged, and it took until 1955 to complete the rebuilding work. The Cross Keys was once St. David's Hospital. The market has also been rebuilt. It's the largest indoor market in Wales. The city has few historic buildings remaining. The towers of the Carlton Cinema have survived, although it's now a bookshop. The old wine shop now sells health foods. The city has an indoor shopping centre, art gallery, museum, theatres, cinemas, bowling alley and the Brangwyn Hall. We cross over the Mumbles Road to the leisure centre. It has one of the highest visitor figures in Wales. It's on the site of Victoria Station. The glass in the roof was blown out in the Blitz. It closed in 1964, and some of the railway arches remain. The Swansea and Mumbles Railway ran alongside it. It was the first passenger-carrying railway in the world in 1807, when it was horse-drawn. Steam days passed. Then these electric cars took over in 1929, until the line closed in 1960. Only the front of cab number 7 remains in Dylan Thomas Square. The Swansea-born poet, best known for his radio play Under Milkwood, died tragically in America in 1953 at the age of 39. The old Guildhall has been restored and renamed the Dylan Thomas Centre. An annual maritime and shanty festival is held, and the Welsh folk dancers are entertaining the crowd. Moored in the river is the brig Phoenix. A life-saving display is also being given by the Newfoundland dogs. There's a collection of stalls and shanty singers from Britain and further afield. The Maritime and Industrial Museum occupies an old warehouse on what was once the South Dock. Last steam tug to work in the Bristol Channel, Canning, is one of its outside exhibits. This collection will become part of the Welsh Waterfront Museum, to be sited here in a few years' time. The Trinity House lightship, similar to the one seen at Cardiff, worked off the eastern end of the Helwick sandbank, 15 miles from Worm's Head. The hydraulic pump house is another of the buildings surviving from the old South Docks days as a working port. Today it houses a restaurant and bar. The swing bridge was partly dismantled when the dock was converted into a marina, the first one in South Wales. Captain Cat looks down at the yachts and residential apartments. Whilst he is probably sad at the loss of the merchant shipping, at least this dock hasn't had the indignity of ending up as a car park. Pilot House Wharf in the Abertawe is home to the small fishing fleet. The old pilot house survives as a cafe. The Sea Scouts and Sea Cadets have also made their home here. Across the river is the Swansea ferry port, where the Cork ferry berths. Our journey commenced in Cardiff Bay by the new barrage. We're nearly at the end now as we view the boats entering the lock of Swansea's barrage, the first one constructed in Britain. We hope you've enjoyed travelling and sharing the experience with us. The sun is setting over Swansea Bay. Journey's end for us today.